What if I was to say that at some point in the next half a dozen years, you would never have to queue for your favourite theme park ride ever again, as the concept of waiting in a line to board a roller coaster has practically disappeared? Now I know that seems a bit too good to be true and also sounds a little bit clickbaity, which by definition it kinda is, but that is however a very likely possibility that's becoming a lot more real than you may have originally thought. But how exactly would this come to be, why would it come to be, and where is it coming to be?
What do you mean by that?
Well, thank you for asking, and those are incredibly good questions if I do say so myself. They also spark a bit of good old-fashioned theorizing, analyzing, and all of that stuff, so that's absolutely what we're going to be looking at in this very video. So make sure to leave all those loose belongings in the designated lockers and pay attention to the safety briefing videos as we ask the same question that you ask yourself every single time you're stuck in a 2-hour line for that 48-second ride experience. Could theme park queue lines actually go extinct forever? Hello there viewer, and welcome back to the channel where we all sit down and have a bit of a chinwag about some very intellectual and important topics, and quite frankly, I don't think there are enough people talking about this. I often think of queue lines similar to how it feels to open a lovely packet of ready salted Walker's crisps, only to see that 80% of the bag is nothing more than that sweet surplus of emptiness, because you knew it was coming, you were expecting it, and you have no one else to blame for your errors other than yourself. But it's still a disappointing feeling that sits with you for a small amount of time. But I guess that's where queue lines are actually worse than unreasonably packed yet financially inflated crisp packets, because queue lines take up a lot more than a small amount of time. Okay, look, I'll stop waffling on about absolute nonsense.
What is blood yapping about?
The fact of the matter is that a queue needs to exist for a theme park ride because a theme park ride simply can't accommodate every single guest in an instant, and until the far future where they have roller coasters with a guest throughput of, I don't know, about 10,000 people per hour, we're just gonna have to suck it up and stand in that queue. But what if we don't have to stand at all? What if there was some sort of genius idea that meant we, as a guest who paid to enjoy our day at the park, can actually go about enjoying our day at the park without the need of waiting in a line, all whilst still theoretically queuing for the ride we want to go on? Well, it's funny you should say that, because that's exactly what I was about to bring up. Virtual queues. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We solved the problem of queue. Guys, I don't think we solved it yet. Okay, so virtual queuing, you may have heard of it, you may have even experienced it, and it's been around for a hot minute now. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I went to Chessington World of Adventures a while back, and I was excited to get on the fairly new Dwayne Johnson themed B&M shuttle launched wing coaster, and I remember dropping to my knees in despair when I went on the app just to be told that the virtual queue for the ride was already booked out at the very start of the day. Okay, first world problems I know, and it did actually let me book it later on in the day, so it was all fine I guess, but I can still remember that feeling I had at the end of the day when I really started to dread the idea of more of these virtual queues popping up, because to me it just didn't make sense at all. So for context, it was a busy Halloween event. I got my space in the queue booked in probably about lunchtime, and then I had to wait a few more hours to actually get into the physical entrance to the ride, only to realise that there was still a queue after the queue. I had to wait for maybe half an hour or so before finally getting on the actual ride, and well, realising that it's actually a pretty boring one at that. I said it. But mid-coasters aren't the problem here. It's the implementation of these virtual queues that's not just found in Chessington in the UK, but also much bigger parks like Disney World and Universal Studios all across the globe. Look, I need to state that I'm not a queue line connoisseur over here, and I'm also not saying that I could do any better than the professionals. I'm simply just putting out my thoughts. I do reckon that virtual queues have a long way to come before being a genuine good replacement for the classic physical queue lines. For example, the concept of having to book your time slots early in the morning to get a reservation for later in the day is not only confusing, but also needs a lot of pre-planning around your whole day if you actually want to make the most of it and get on everything. There's also the fact that with physical queues, there's a somewhat consequence of joining a queue, which is that once you've joined the queue, you can't really join another. But whereas virtual queuing, it seems like it could potentially give opportunities for groups of people to find ways to reserve a lot of different rides all at once. And if you think about an entire park of people abusing the system like this, everything just gets booked out before you can step out of the car park. I may be a little bit stupid here, but what if instead of booking time slots, you could join a queue that's simply a countdown of guests that you slowly make your way to the end of? Just like if you've ever had to call a busy phone line and get placed in a queue full of loads of people all waiting to get through. Once you're at the front of the queue, you would get alerted and then given a small period of time in which you could walk up to the entrance of the ride, scan your QR code or whatever it would be at the ride entrance, and then that's it. You're pretty much on, and there's no huge crowd of people who all booked for the same time, all squeezing through the door like one of those fake mobile zombies zombie games. There are, however, lots of downsides to the entire idea of virtually queuing other than the ones we've already mentioned. For example, in Disney World, you must use the My Disney Experience app, and that requires an account with all of your information, your park tickets, GPS tracking, access to notifications, and of course a whole host of terms and conditions to agree to, which, if they're anything like that story a while back about how a Disney Plus subscription was used as a defense against something that happened inside of a Disney resort, then let's be honest, that surely can't be a good thing for the future. Another idea is, what if the app just breaks? It could have downtime for loads of reasons, an attack or a simple service outage, and then you've potentially got a whole park of guests who can't ride any of the rides because of the virtual queues not virtually queuing anymore. I also think that with how prevalent upselling fast track tickets and passes are in this day and age, looking once again at Disney, you have to think about how much easier and dangerous it could be if you could simply bypass a virtual queue with an ease of a button bringing up Apple Pay. Sure, it's still up to the person buying it in the first place, but it's still one of those things that just feels like it shouldn't be that easy and effortless to do, especially considering how all in all Fast Track completely ruins ride throughputs across an absolutely absurd amount of theme parks. The positives though are worth making an argument for, because with all that free time on your hands, if all you had to do was look down at your phone every now and then to see where you are in the queue, you could spend the rest of the day actually taking in the rest of the park, enjoying yourself a hell of a lot more on a nice bench or a patch of grass rather than in some cattle pen hellscape. This would also benefit the park, because with all that free time on your hands, you'll probably end up strolling into a merchandise store, restaurant or arcade and walk out with a lot less money than you had going in. The park might even be able to use the space that would have been allocated for the queue line to better uses, like more midway games for example, green spaces or just seating. There's a lot of potential for something really good to come out of it, and let's not forget about how if the ride that you're queuing for breaks down, it's going to be a lot less heartbreaking if you're currently scoffing down a cheeseburger and a milkshake compared to standing in a painfully long cramped queue and being told that you can either hope and wait or just outright give up and go home. So to swiftly put a pin on this, I think it's safe to say that there's positives and negatives of the idea of virtual queuing, and it definitely seems like this is the very real future of theme parks, for better or for worse. I'm a little bit skeptical of how it's actually going to be executed, but hopeful that eventually a park will get it right and the rest will follow soon after, leading to one incredible day where you'll be walking into a theme park and you will never have to wait in a queue line ever again. So log onto your phone, boot up that app, sign your soul away and start reserving your spaces. Let's just hope you remember to charge your mobile phone.